to Gandhi in India, January 9, 1915, March 23, 1946. Chapter 8, Murder. Gandhi's Hardal idea spread throughout India. It united vast multitudes in common action. It gave the people a sense of power. They loved Gandhi for it. The Hardal paralyzed economic life. The dead cities and towns were tangible proof that Indians could be effective. What the Indian people needed most and lacked most was faith in themselves. Gandhi gave it to them. 600 men and women in Bombay signed the Satyagraha pledge. Gandhi was happy. He had won with fewer numbers in South Africa. Vows were being taken in other cities, and in many villages. Even such a mighty government as the government of India, Gandhi declared at Bombay, will have to yield if we are true to our pledge. For the pledge is no small thing. It means a change of heart. It is an attempt to introduce the religious spirit into politics. We may no longer believe in the doctrine of tit for tat. We may not meet hatred with hatred, violence with violence, evil with evil. But we have to make a continuous and persistent effort to return good for evil. Nothing is impossible. Skeptics mocked. I have no desire to argue, Gandhi replied. As the British proverb says, the proof of the pudding lies in the eating. The movement had been launched. It would surely spread and surely triumph. In a further appeal to the Viceroy, the Mahatma put the whole question on a high, universal level. The Satyagraha campaign, he told the Viceroy, constitutes an attempt to revolutionize politics and restore moral force to its original station. He quoted a statement of President Woodrow Wilson at Paris to the effect that if the moral force behind the League of Nations covenant did not suffice, physical force would. We, Gandhi wrote, hope to reverse the process and by our action show that physical force is nothing compared to moral force and that moral force never fails. Somebody protested that Gandhi's Satyagraha campaign would abet Bolshevism. The Bolshevik Revolution had taken place on November 7, 1917, and made a deep impression on the East. No, Gandhi said in a speech at Madras on March 30, 1919, if anything can possibly prevent this calamity descending upon our country, it is Satyagraha. Bolshevism is the necessary result of modern materialistic civilization. Its insensate worship of matter has given rise to a school which has been brought up to look upon materialistic advancement as the goal, and which has lost all touch with the final things in life. I prophesy that if we disobey the law of the final supremacy of spirit over matter, of liberty and love over brute force, in a few years' time we shall have Bolshevism rampant in this land which was once so holy. The Hardal, a prelude to Satyagraha, was observed in Delhi on March 30th, and in Bombay and other cities and villages on April 6th. Needless to say, Gandhi reported, the Hardal in Bombay was a complete success. The nationwide Hardal, he said, was a most wonderful spectacle. In Delhi, however, the Hardal provoked violence. The Punjab, home of millions of Muslims and Hindus, and of 5 million bearded, turbaned, stoutly built Sikhs whose religion was an offshoot of Hinduism, echoed to riots and shootings. Leaders asked Gandhi to come quickly to Delhi and the Punjab. The British stopped him at the borders of the province on April 9th and escorted him back to Bombay, where he was released. En route to and from Bombay, Gandhi sent messages that he was safe and free. Reports of his arrest had inflamed the already heated passions of the people. Riots occurred in Bombay and Ahmedabad. On April 11th, Gandhi admonished his followers in Bombay. We have been throwing stones, he said. We have obstructed tramcars by putting obstacles in the way. This is not Satyagraha. We have demanded the release of about 50 men who had been arrested for deeds of violence. But our duty is chiefly to get ourselves arrested. It is a breach of religious duty to endeavor to secure the release of those who have committed deeds of violence. If we cannot conduct this movement without the slightest violence from our side, Gandhi warned, the movement might have to be abandoned. It may be necessary to go even further. The time may come for me to offer Satyagraha against ourselves. I have just heard that some English gentlemen have been injured. Some may even have died from such injuries. If so, it would be a great blot on Satyagraha. For me, Englishmen too are our brethren. From Bombay, Gandhi went to his ashram at Sabarmati, where on April 14th he addressed a huge multitude. Ahmedabad citizens too had committed acts of violence of which Gandhi was ashamed. A rapier run through my body could hardly have pained me more. Scathingly he denounced them. We have burnt down buildings, forcibly captured weapons, extorted money, stopped trains, cut off telegraph wires, killed innocent people. Immediately after the Sabarmati meeting, Gandhi left for Nadiad, a town in the Kheda district, 29 miles from Ahmedabad, where he had recruited for the war. There he discovered that violence had spread to small towns as well, and plundered shops and private houses. As penance, he announced that he had undertaken a 72-hour fast. He asked the people to fast 24. Immediately after the Sabarmati meeting, Gandhi left for Nadiad, a town in the Kheda district, 29 miles from Ahmedabad, where he had recruited for the war. There he discovered that violence had spread to small towns as well. Depressed, Gandhi told the people of Nadiad that the entire Satyagraha campaign was a Himalayan miscalculation on his part. On April 18th he called off the movement. Many scoffed. The Mahatma, they taunted, had made a Himalayan miscalculation. But Gandhi never regretted a confession of error. I have always held, he wrote in his autobiography, that it is only when one sees one's own mistakes with a convex lens, and does just the reverse in the case of others, that one is able to arrive at a just relative estimate of the two. What politician would say that? His miscalculation, Gandhi explained, was in overlooking the fact that a person must be trained in civil obedience before civil disobedience against some laws could succeed. I am sorry, Gandhi said in cancelling the Satyagraha campaign, that when I embarked upon a mass movement, I underrated the forces of evil, and I must now pause and consider how best to meet the situation. Nobody forsook his leadership, because he did not immediately announce a clever new plan to divert attention from the one that failed. Meanwhile, the Punjab province boiled. Events there culminated in the occurrence in the sacred Sikh city of Amritsar on April 13, 1919, which Sir Valentine Kairal called that black day in the annals of British India. For Gandhi it was a turning point. Indians never forgot it. An official commission of inquiry, appointed by the government of India and consisting of 7 members, 4 British and 3 Indian, with Lord Hunter, Senator of the College of Justice of Scotland, as chairman, investigated the Punjab disturbances for many months and then published its report. It found that in Amritsar the hurdle on the 30th of March was successful beyond expectation and stopped the whole business of the city. There was no collision with the police and no resort to violence. On April 6th, Amritsar, a city of 150,000 inhabitants, observed another hurdle. This second time also the hurdle passed off successfully, the official Hunter report affirms, and Europeans could and did walk unmolested amongst the crowds. On April 9th, the Punjab government issued an order for the deportation from the province of the 2 Congress party leaders, Dr. Saifuddin Kichlu, a Muslim, and Dr. Satyapal, a Hindu. It was the day of the Hindu festival Ram Navami in which, according to the report, Muslims also joined, shouting Mahatma Gandhi ki jai, long live Mahatma Gandhi, and Hindu Musliman ki jai, long live Hindu Muslim unity, and drinking out of the same cups publicly by way of demonstration. The police expected that the demonstrators would try to liberate the 2 leaders and precautions were taken, but there was no attempt at rescue. The banishing of the leaders removed from Amritsar the 2 men who might have restrained the populace. Starting in anger at the action of the government and deporting the 2 local politicians, reads the Hunter report, a mob raged through the streets. At the National Bank, Mr. Stewart, the manager, and Mr. Scott, the assistant manager, were beaten to death, and at the Alliance Bank, Mr. G.M. Thompson, the manager, who attempted to defend himself with a revolver, was cruelly murdered. Other English people were assaulted. 2 days later, Brigadier General Reginald Edward Harry Dyer arrived at Amritsar. Dyer, born in Simla, India, in 1864, was educated at Middleton College, County Cork, Ireland, and entered the British Army in 1885. He fought on the northwest frontier, in the Burma War and in the First World War. April 1919 found him commanding a brigade at Jalandhar, in the Punjab. Ordered to Amritsar on the 11th, he issued a proclamation on the 12th prohibiting processions and meetings. The issue of the proclamation, which was formally signed by the brigade major on General Dyer's behalf, says the Hunter report, was left to the police. It does not appear what steps were taken to ensure its publication. During the morning of the next day, April 13th, Dyer went through the city reading the proclamation to the people. From an examination of the map, showing the different places where the proclamation was read, the Hunter report asserts, it is evident that in many parts of the city the proclamation was not read. The Hunter report then tells the story of the massacre of April 13th. About 1 o'clock, it reads, General Dyer heard that the people intended to hold a big meeting about 4:30 p.m. On being asked why he did not take measures to prevent its being held, he replied, I went there as soon as I could. I had to think the matter out. The meeting took place at Jallianwala Bagh. Bagh means garden. Jallianwala Bagh, the report says, is not in any sense a garden as its name would suggest. It is a rectangular piece of unused ground, covered to some extent by building material and debris. It is almost entirely surrounded by walls of buildings. The entrances and exits to it are few and imperfect. It seems to be frequently used to accommodate large gatherings of people. At the end at which General Dyer entered there is a raised ground on each side of the entrance. A large crowd had gathered at the opposite end of the Bagh and were being addressed by a man on a raised platform about 150 yards from where General Dyer stationed his troops. The report estimates that there were between 10 and 20,000 persons in the Bagh. Dyer went to the garden with 25 Gurkhas, soldiers from Nepal, and 25 Balukis from Balochistan armed with rifles, 40 Gurkhas armed only with knives and 2 armored cars. On arriving at Jallianwala Bagh, the report declares, he, Dyer, entered with this force by a narrow entrance which was not sufficiently wide to allow the cars to pass. They were accordingly left in the street outside. As soon as General Dyer entered the Bagh, the report continues, he stationed 25 troops on one side of the higher ground at the entrance, and 25 troops on the other side. Without giving the crowd any warning to disperse, which he considered unnecessary as they were in breach of his proclamation, he ordered his troops to fire and the firing continued for about 10 minutes. There is no evidence as to the nature of the address to which the audience was listening. None of them were provided with firearms, although some of them may have been carrying sticks. As soon as the firing commenced the crowd began to disperse. In all 1,650 rounds were fired by the troops. The firing was individual and not volley firing. As a result of this investigation it was discovered that approximately 379 people were killed. The report estimates that there were 3 times as many wounded as dead. This adds up to 379 dead plus 1137 wounded or 1516 casualties with 1650 bullets. The crowd, penned in the low-lying garden, was a perfect target. Under cross-examination before the Hunter Commission, Dyer revealed his mind and purpose. Question: from time to time, you changed your firing and directed it to the place where the crowd were thickest. Answer: that is so. The crowd had rushed to the lowest wall, which was 5 feet high, and that is where the bullets felled many of them. Question: supposing the passage was sufficient to allow the armored cars to go in, would you have opened fire with the machine guns? Answer: I think, probably, yes. When examined before use, the Hunter report asserts, he, Dyer, explained that his mind was made up as he came along in his motor car. If his orders against holding a meeting were disobeyed he was going to fire at once. I had made up my mind, Dyer testified, I would do all men to death. General Dyer's own dispatch to his military superior, which is quoted in the Hunter report with his italics, said, "I fired and continued to fire until the crowd dispersed, and I consider this the least amount of firing which could produce the necessary effect. It was my duty to produce if I was to justify my action." It was no longer a question of merely dispersing the crowd, but one of producing a sufficient moral effect from a military point of view, not only on those who were present, but more especially throughout the Punjab. There could be no question of undue severity. The Hunter Commission decided that this was unfortunately a mistaken conception of his duty. It also found that in continuing to fire for so long as he did, it appears to us that General Dyer committed a grave error. Moreover, the report notes that General Dyer's action in not making provision for the wounded at Jallianwala Bagh has been made the subject of criticism. Dyer said at the hearings, "I was ready to help them if they applied." Sir Michael O'Dwyer, British acting governor of the Punjab, approved of Dyer's action and referred to the disturbances as rebellion. The Hunter Commission commented, "The action taken by General Dyer has also been described by others as having saved the situation in the Punjab and having averted a rebellion on a scale similar to the mutiny." It does not, however, appear to us possible to draw this conclusion, particularly in view of the fact that a conspiracy to overthrow British power had not been formed prior to the outbreaks. Not only was no insurrection intended or planned, but, according to the Hunter report, it appears that the outburst on the 10th of April subsided in a few hours. There was no repetition of any serious incident afterwards, either on that date or on subsequent dates. And even with regard to the events on the 10th, if the officer in charge had done his duty, the worst crimes, viz., the murders of the bank officers, would in all probability have been prevented. Amritsar had been calm for 2.5 days when Dyer's butchery occurred. His unnecessary massacre was the child of the British military mentality then dominant in India. To characterize this mentality, the Hunter report quotes an utterance of General Drake Brockman of Delhi, who said, "Force is the only thing that an Asiatic has any respect for." "I thought I would be doing a jolly lot of good," was Dyer's airy summary of the massacre at Jallianwala Bagh. To add humiliation to hurt, General Dyer published his infamous crawling order. On April 10th, Miss Sherwood, the headmistress of a girls' school in Amritsar, had been barbarously attacked by the mob. Several days after the Jallianwala Bagh bloodbath, Dyer issued instructions that anybody passing the street where Miss Sherwood was assaulted would have to go on all fours. This applied even to members of families whose only approach to their homes was through that street. Gandhi felt worse about this outrage, as he called it, than about the massacre. At the spot, moreover, on which Miss Sherwood was beaten, Dyer erected a whipping post for the public flogging of those who ignored his order that Indians on animals and vehicles must alight, Indians carrying umbrellas or parasols must lower them, and all Indians must salute or salaam with the hand as they passed British officers in some districts of Amritsar. The British Secretary of State for India, Edwin S. Montagu, in an official dispatch to the Viceroy, Lord Chelmsford, dated May 26, 1920, wrote, "His Majesty's government repudiate emphatically the doctrine upon which Brigadier General Dyer based his action at Jallianwala Bagh." The crawling order, Montagu added, offended against every canon of civilized government. Innumerable Englishmen were ashamed of Dyer's deed, yet he found many defenders. Dyer was asked to resign from the army. Towards the end of his life, he invented a rangefinder for sighting aircraft. He died in retirement at Bristol on July 23, 1927. Under the Hunter Commission's cross-examination, General Dyer had said, "Yes, I think it quite possible that I could have dispersed them perhaps without firing, but I was going to punish them. My idea from the military point of view was to make a wide impression." We have no doubt, the official British Hunter report continued, that he succeeded in creating a very wide impression and a great moral effect, but of a character quite opposite from the one he intended. Jallianwala Bagh quickened India's political life and drew Gandhi into politics. Thank you for watching my video.